Well, joining me now to talk about all of the uncertainty that's in the markets caused both by the hung Parliament and the other financial factors that we've been looking at this morning is Simon Derrick. He is Chief Currency Strategist from the Bank of New York Mellon. Good morning to you.
Good morning.
What a turbulent 24 hours.
Well, exactly. I mean, it just think we've got Greece on the brink. We've had the largest intraday points drop in the Dow, and now the first hung Parliament in the UK since 1974. It's difficult to think of a more remarkable set of circumstances. I think what's interesting in this is actually, relatively speaking, how well sterling's performing.
Now, there were quite a few people suggesting that that sterling was becoming almost a safe haven, and others thinking that actually the hung Parliament was already priced in. Do you think that both those assessments were accurate?
Yes, I do, actually. I do think that over the course of the last month and a half, there were definitely flows going into sterling, certainly flows relative to the euro.
Yes.
And I think there's absolutely no question that people were starting to feel that the hung Parliament was built in. Now, obviously, if we look at the price action last night, there's several different factors you've got to take into account. Clearly, sterling was following the polls as they were coming through and the election results. Secondly, it was clearly reacting to the rally in the dollar that was seen. But overall, to see this level of uncertainty on the political front, so uncertainty that most people in the markets really don't remember,
yes,
and yet for sterling still to be trading this relatively calm way, says to me that investors are taking this relatively sanguinely. Now, it might be a different matter if we're talking about a week to 2 weeks to form a coalition, but for the moment it seems to me the investors are giving the benefits of the doubt.
Yes. Now, if we had a strong LibLab pact or something else by Monday, it may well be that that remains the case. If there is increased uncertainty, then it does bring up this spectre of it being impossible to get that credibility that's needed to convince the markets and everybody else that the deficit can be cut.
Yeah, and I think that is the critical factor here. That what the markets clearly want is a government where they feel that there is a strong mandate, yes, and they're going to drive forward. What they don't want to see is a lot of haggling taking place and the feeling that it's a relatively weak coalition, a coalition that may only last several months. That would be the worst for cutting the deficit. And I think in those circumstances, sterling would suffer, and I think, in fairness, the UK asset markets would suffer as well.
Just looking at the figures that we've got at the moment, do you think then that a LibLab pact would be stronger from that point of view than a minority Tory government? It's
very difficult to say. I mean, the numbers are so finely balanced. I mean, I've been trying to work it out all morning, going through all the different combinations, and none of them seem to work out that well.
We're right on the edge. We're right at that point where a minority government looks like it's almost unsustainable, but just numerically possible.
And that's the thing. And on that basis, it's got to be a coalition, but a coalition with who? And at the moment, you've got to say, if Peter Hain's talking about actually being prepared to talk to the Liberals, then that might well be the most likely outcome. After all, constitutionally, that's the first start on this.
Let's look at a situation that we have at the moment globally, where so much money obviously coming out of the euro, people very nervous. Where is that money going? Is it going into the US dollar?
Well, I think it's even more specific than that. He's going into the US Treasury market. In fairness, I mean, given the fact that gold's close to record highs, I think there's a certain safe haven there.
Yes.
And it's also worth noting that the Swiss franc continues to go from strength to strength. So clearly there are very specific safe havens. But the fact of the matter is they're few and far between in this current market. There are so many problems in so many different markets. As we found overnight, you know, people are really only going to take the safest of havens. And I've got to say, I think the dollar and the US Treasury are going to continue to gain.
Simon, thank you very much indeed for your insights this morning.